Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we are getting into something absolutely fundamental, animal reproduction.
It really is core to life, isn't it?
Totally. And our mission today is basically to unpack the essentials from animal physiology, from genes to organisms, give you that shortcut understanding from the tiniest signals right up to the big picture stuff, the ecological strategies.
Exactly, and it starts with the why, right? Why reproduce? It's not really about keeping the individual alive.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It's about the species continuing. The whole idea that, only cells give rise to new cells. That's the bedrock. Life keeps going because the blueprint gets passed on.
Yeah.
Even like Craig Venter's work building synthetic genomes, it's all about understanding that fundamental process.
Okay, so purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the species going. Now, the how. There are the basics, right? Asexual cloning, like budding, or that parthenogenesis thing where eggs develop without fertilization.
Mm-hmm. Budding, fission,
Yeah.
parthenogenesis.
Yeah. And then there's sexual reproduction. But, asexual cloning is so much faster. So why? Why is sex, with all its complications, so common?
That was Darwin's big question, wasn't it?
It was, and it's still a great question. We have basically three solid hypotheses now, backed by experiments. First one is about good mutations.
Okay.
Sex lets beneficial mutations that pop up in different individuals come together in one offspring. That speeds up how populations adapt when, the environment changes.
Like mixing the best genetic ingredients.
Pretty much. Second, it deals with bad mutations. Cloning just passes down all the harmful stuff. But with sex, you might get a healthy version of a gene from your partner canceling out a bad one you have.
Like genetic proofreading.
Sort of, yeah. And we see this like asexual water fleas, Daphnia, they tend to pile up more harmful mutations compared to the sexual ones.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third one?
Parasites. It's all about staying ahead of parasites. The genetic shuffling in sexual reproduction creates so much diversity.
So it makes it harder for parasites to target one specific genetic type. Exactly. They can't get a lock as easily. There was this amazing study on New Zealand snails, the asexual populations, wiped out by parasites that evolved to exploit them. But the sexual snail populations right nearby, they were fine. That genetic variety was their shield.
Wow. So sex is like this incredible toolkit for innovation, quality control, and defense.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Okay, so with that foundation, let's think bigger picture. How do animals actually invest in making offspring? Because energy is limited, right? Our source talks about Y-selected versus K-selected species.
Absolutely. R selected, think R for rate of population growth.
Yeah.
It's a strategy of quantity over quality. You pour energy into making tons, maybe millions, of offspring, like a sea star releasing clouds of eggs.
Minimal yolk, no parental care.
Right. Most won't survive, obviously, but the sheer numbers mean some will make it. It's pure statistics.
And K-selected, K for carrying capacity.
That's the flip side. Very few offspring, maybe just one at a time. But parents invest huge amounts of energy in nourishing them, protecting them. Think of a gorilla. High survival rate for those few offspring.
Big investment, big payoff per individual.
Exactly. And of course, there's a whole spectrum in between, like, Garibaldi fish, hundreds of eggs. But the male sticks around to guard them for a bit.
Okay, so a range of strategies. Now let's zoom back into the physiology. How we classify the way sexual reproduction happens. There are three main types mentioned.
Yep. First, oviparous. That's egg-laying, basically. Young develop and hatch from eggs outside the mother. Think most fish, amphibians, reptiles, insects, snails too.
Okay, classic egg layers.
Then oviparous. This is interesting. The eggs still develop using yolk, but they do it partly or fully inside the parent. They hatch either inside or like right as they're expelled, so they emerge live. Rattlesnakes, some sharks.
So internally hatched eggs.
Pretty much. And here's a kicker. Technically, all birds fit here.
Wait, birds, but they lay eggs.
They do, but fertilization and the very early development happen inside the female's reproductive tract before the shell goes on. So that early internal phase aligns them with ovoviparity, even though we see the shelled egg later.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. Okay, what's the third type?
Viviparous. This is what we usually think of as live birth. The young develop entirely inside the parent, getting nutrients directly from the mother's blood, usually through a placenta. Almost all mammals, some sharks like hammerheads.
Right. And this is where things get evolutionarily cool connecting these types. The book mentions monotremes, like the platypus.
Yeah, the egg-laying mammals, they're fascinating. They kind of bridge the gap. Their eggs develop quite a bit inside the female, getting some maternal nutrients even without a proper placenta. Then they're laid.
A real snapshot of an evolutionary transition.
Totally. And then you have marsupials, viviparous, yes, but the babies are born incredibly underdeveloped
Hmm.
and finish growing in a pouch. It just shows this amazing continuum, this evolutionary experimentation in how to bring new life into the world.
Okay, so we have the why and the how in terms of physiological types, but when animals reproduce is just as critical, isn't it? Timing is everything.
Absolutely crucial. Seasonal breeding is huge. You want the offspring to arrive when conditions are best, usually when food is plentiful.
And what's the main cue for that timing?
In places with distinct seasons, like temperate latitudes, the big one is photoperiod, day length.
Right.
It acts like an external timer, syncing up the animal's internal uh, circadian clock, like birds knowing to breed in spring as days get longer.
And other factors fine-tune it?
Yeah, things like temperature, rainfall, food availability itself. The great tit, for example, needs its breeding time perfectly with the caterpillar boom. Crossbills time theirs with pine seed abundance.
Makes sense. But what about places without strong day-length changes, like the tropics or deserts?
Good point. There, photoperiod isn't the main driver. It's more about rainfall and temperature. Think of the zebrafinch, super opportunistic. Rainfalls, boom, they can ovulate practically overnight to take advantage of the greening that follows.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah. And other cues can trigger hatching too, like specific temperatures for snapping turtle eggs, or even decreasing oxygen levels for mosquito eggs in stagnant water.
So it's this complex environmental orchestra, but it's not just about one individual being ready. Both sexes need to be synced up,
All
right?
right, precisely. That synchronization is key. And animals have evolved amazing ways to manage it.
Like what?
Well, for simpler situations, maybe external fertilization, environmental cues alone might be enough, or pheromones, chemical signals. The South Pacific palolo worm is just spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, masses of them release their eggs and sperm all at once, perfectly timed to specific moon phases. Reef corals do something similar, often spawning after a full moon. They think these cryptochrome proteins, which are sensitive to light, might be involved in sensing moonlight.
That's incredible. Moonlight triggering a mass spawning event?
Isn't it? But then for animals with more complex social lives, you often see elaborate courtship displays.
The songs and dances?
Exactly. Ritualized movements, songs, visual signals. It's about recognizing the right species, attracting a mate, signaling you're ready to breed, and importantly, advertising your fitness. Look how healthy and capable I am.
Like the bowerbirds.
Classic example. The males in New Guinea build these incredibly decorated structures, the bowers, and then perform. The female inspects the bower, watches the dance. If she's not impressed, she just leaves. High standards.
Talk about performance anxiety. And didn't you mention the wolf spider earlier? That's life or death.
It really is. The female is often much larger and predatory. The male has to perform this very specific leg-waving ritual, showing off distinct markings, basically saying, hey, mate, don't eat me.
It suppresses her attack instinct just long enough.
Phew, intense. It really highlights how the environment, the nervous system, hormones, the reproductive organs themselves, they're all interacting in this incredibly intricate dance.
Perfectly put. A complex, coordinated system. Okay, so let's dive into those systems, the nuts and bolts. In vertebrates, there's this central axis, right? Hypothalamus, gonads, reproductive tract, accessory glands.
Yep. Starting with the male system, the testes are central. They make spermatogenesis and the main male hormone, testosterone.
And in most mammals, they hang outside in the scrotum. Why is that?
Temperature. Spermatogenesis is very sensitive to heat in most mammals. The scrotum keeps the testes a few degrees cooler than core body temperature.
Ah,
Though it's interesting, whales, elephants, their testes are internal, but they have special blood vessel arrangements, countercurrent heat exchangers to cool them. Still a bit of a puzzle why mammal sperm need it cooler when bird testes work fine internally at higher temps.
huh. Okay, so spermatogenesis itself, what's involved?
It's a continuous factory, basically. Starts with stem cells, spermatogonia. They divide mitotically, then undergo meiosis. That's the division that halves the chromosome number and shuffles genes. And finally, this big remodeling phase called spermatogenesis, turning round cells into those sleek, motylus spermatozoa.
The ones with a head, midpiece, and tail.
Exactly. Head contains the nucleus, plus the acrosome that's like an enzyme-filled cap, the drill to penetrate the egg. Midpiece is packed with mitochondria for energy. Tail for swimming.
And who helps them along the way?
The Sertoli cells. They're absolutely crucial, like nurse cells. They form a protective barrier, the blood testes barrier, feed the developing sperm, clean up defective ones, secrete fluid. They do a lot.
The support crew, got it, and the semen itself, the fluid part.
That comes from the accessory glands, seminal vesicles, prostate, bulbourethral glands. They contribute different things. Fructose for energy, alkaline fluids to neutralize vaginal acidity, prostaglandins, clotting factors, mucus for lubrication, sometimes even stuff to form a temporary plug after mating in rodents, for example.
A complex cocktail.
Very. And then delivery via the penis. Erection is basically hydraulics phase of congestion. Blood rushes into erectile tissues. It's controlled mainly by nitric oxide, NO, relaxing smooth muscle in the arterioles, allowing that inflow. It's unusual because it's direct parasympathetic control causing vasodilation.
Fascinating mechanism. Okay, let's switch to the female system. Ovaries are the key players here.
Right. Ovaries produce the oogenesis and the main female hormones, estrogens and progesterone. Big difference from males. Ova-release is periodic, not continuous.
And oogenesis itself is quite different from spermatogenesis.
Radically different. Female mammals are born with basically all the precursor cells, oogogonia, they'll ever have.
Yes.
These develop into primary oocytes and then just stop. They enter meiotic arrest, sometimes for decades.
Decades, wow.
Yeah. Then, usually just before ovulation, one primary oocyte finishes its first meiotic division, but it divides unevenly. You get one big secondary oocyte and one tiny non-functional polar body.
Yeah.
The second meiotic division only happens if a sperm penetrates the secondary oocyte.
And again, it divides unevenly.
Yep. One massive ovum packed with all the cytoplasm and nutrients for the early embryo and another tiny polar body. It's all about conserving resources for the one cell that matters.
Resource allocation again. And this is all happening within follicles.
Exactly. The oocyte matures inside a follicle. These follicles grow through stages, with the granulosa cells multiplying, nurturing the oocyte, producing estrogen. The big event is the LH surge, a spike in luteinizing hormone, triggered by high estrogen. That causes the mature follicle to rupture, releasing the ovum that's ovulation.
And the leftover follicle.
It transforms into the corpus luteum. This is a temporary endocrine gland, pumping out progesterone mainly, and some estrogen. Its job is to prepare the uterus for a potential pregnancy.
What happens if pregnancy doesn't occur?
It degenerates after about 2 weeks in humans, triggered by prostaglandin F2 alpha. But if pregnancy does happen, it sticks around, maintained by hormones from the early embryo, providing that crucial progesterone support.
And the uterus and cervix are responding to these hormones all along.
Absolutely. Estrogen builds up the uterine lining, the endometrium. Progesterone then makes it thick, vascular, and secretory, ready to receive an embryo. Cervical mucus also changes dramatically thin and watery under estrogen to let sperm through, thick and sticky under progesterone to form a barrier.
Such precise coordination. Let's touch on how sex gets determined in the first place.
Right, sex determination. In mammals like us, it's usually genetic sex determination, GSD. XX for female, XY for male. The sperm carries either X or Y, so it determines the genetic sex. Birds are different, ZW system, the egg determines the sex.
But it's not always genetic.
No, lots of reptiles, fish too, have environmental sex determination, ESD. Temperature is a common one. For many turtles, cool incubation temps make males, warm temps make females. Crocodiles can be opposite or have intermediate temps for males. Social factors can even trigger sex change in some fish.
Wow. Environment overriding genetics. And in mammals, assuming GSD, how does the XY or XX translate into male or female bodies?
It's often described as a default female pathway. If there's no Y chromosome, the gonads develop into ovaries, and the Mullerian ducts form the female reproductive tract.
Okay.
But if a Y chromosome is present, the SRY gene on it gets activated. It produces testis-determining factor, TDF, which tells the gonads, become testes.
And the testes then take over.
Pretty much. They start making testosterone, which masculinizes the reproductive tract by promoting the development of the other set of primitive ducts, the Wolffian ducts, into male structures. And crucially, the testes also make anti-Mullerian hormone, AMH, which causes those default female Mullerian ducts to degenerate.
So 2 key signals from the early testes, testosterone and AMH.
Exactly. And interestingly, the brain gets masculinized too. In males, some testosterone gets into the brain and is converted locally into estrogen by an enzyme called P450 aromatase. That estrogen signal is what sets up male patterns of hormone release later in life.
Wait, estrogen masculinizes the male brain? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But that's how it works. And in females, a protein called alpha-fetoprotein circulates in their blood early on. It binds up any estrogen, preventing it from getting into the brain and having that masculinizing effect. So the female brain pattern remains.
Nature's clever tricks. This complex hormonal signaling, though, it makes organisms vulnerable, right? Especially now with synthetic chemicals.
Definitely. That brings us to environmental endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. These are synthetic compounds, pesticides, herbicides, plastics components, detergents, exhaust fumes,
Stuff that's everywhere.
pretty much. And they can act like hormones, either mimicking them or blocking their action. This can mess up development and reproduction. We've seen concerning effects in wildlife, male fish developing ovarian tissue, alligators in polluted areas with smaller fetuses.
Scary stuff.
It is. And there are potential links to human health issues, too. It's distinct from, say, naturally occurring phytoestrogens in plants, which can sometimes have effects but are part of the natural environment animals co-evolved with. Sometimes those even have adaptive roles, like suppressing quail breeding when food plants are scarce.
A crucial distinction. Okay, assuming everything has gone right hormonally, we get to the main event. Fertilization. Where does this usually happen?
In most mammals, it happens up in the oviduct or fallopian tube.
And the journey there is pretty epic for both egg and sperm.
It really is. The ovum gets swept into the oviduct, but it's only viable for a short time, maybe 12, 24 hours in humans, even less in other species.
And the sperm. Millions start, but few arrive.
Millions, yeah. They have to get through the cervix only possible when estrogen makes the mucus thin, then swim up the uterus and into the oviducts. Uterine contractions help push them along. Only a few thousand actually make it to the vicinity of the egg.
And the egg helps. You mentioned a chemical signal.
Yeah, fascinating new research suggests mature eggs release a chemoattractant called urine. Sperm seem to literally smell their way towards the egg using olfactory receptors, similar to those in our nose. This triggers changes that boost their motility for that final approach.
Wow, a chemical homing beacon. So the sperm arrives. What happens at the moment of fusion?
Several things. Sperm undergo hyperactivation near the egg, swimming more vigorously. They have to bind to the zona pellucida, that outer coat of the egg. This binding, typically to a specific protein called ZP3, is species-specific.
Like a lock and key.
Exactly. That binding triggers the acrosome reaction. The enzyme cap bursts, releasing enzymes that digest a path through the zona.
The enzymatic drill.
Right. Then the first sperm fuses with the egg membrane and enters. And this is critical, that fusion instantly triggers a massive calcium release inside the egg.
Why is that calcium release so important?
It does two things. First, it triggers the block to polyspermy. Cortical granules just under the egg membrane release their enzymes, which alter the ZP3 receptors, and harden the zona, so no more sperm can get in. One sperm only.
Essential for proper development.
Absolutely. And second, that calcium wave also signals the egg to finally complete its second meiotic division, kicking out that last polar body and becoming a mature ovum ready to fuse its nucleus with the sperms.
An incredible cascade of events triggered by a single sperm. And you mentioned sperm competition earlier.
Yeah, in species where females might mate with multiple males close together, there's evolutionary pressure for males to compete after mating. Things like producing way more sperm, hence larger tests in chimps compared to gorillas, or even, like in those honeybees, having chemicals in the semen that actively harm sperm from rival males.
The battleground extends inside the female tract. Okay, fertilization complete. We have a zygote. What happens next?
Early development starts immediately. The zygote divides, becoming a morula, then a blastocyst, this little hollow ball of cells. It floats down the oviduct into the uterus, all while the uterine lining, the endometrium, is being prepared by progesterone from the corpus luteum.
And the blastocyst has different parts.
Yeah, there's the inner cell mass, which will become the actual fetus, and the outer layer, the trophectoderm, which is crucial for implantation and forming the fetal part of the placenta.
Implantation, that's the next big step.
Right. The blastocyst has to attach to and burrow into that prepared uterine wall. Cell adhesion molecules help it stick, and then the trophoblast cells actively invade the endometrium.
Which brings us back to that immune system puzzle. How does the mother not reject this invading genetically half-foreign tissue?
It's still not fully understood, but key mechanisms seem to involve the trophoblast cells themselves actively suppressing the maternal immune response locally. They might express Fas ligand, which tells attacking maternal T cells to undergo apoptosis-programmed cell death.
Wow, fighting back against the immune system?
Kind of, yeah. Or they produce an enzyme, IDO, that breaks down tryptophan, an amino acid that's essential for T cell activation. Plus, special regulatory T cells seem to increase during pregnancy, helping to dampen the overall maternal immune response against the fetus. It's a multi-pronged strategy of immune tolerance.
Amazing biological diplomacy. This implantation establishes the connection for the placenta, right?
Exactly. The placenta is this incredible temporary organ made from both fetal trophoblast and maternal uterine decidua tissues. Its main job is exchange.
Like lungs and intestines for the fetus.
Precisely. Nutrients oxygen diffuse from mother's blood to fetal blood. Carbon dioxide waste products go the other way.
Nah.
But the way they connect varies. Some placentas have more layers between maternal and fetal blood, like in pigs, epithelial. Others are more invasive, eroding maternal tissue. So fetal capillaries are bathed directly in maternal blood, like in humans, hemochorial.
Does that closer connection matter?
It allows for potentially faster exchange, but also means potentially easier transfer of harmful substances or pathogens. It's an evolutionary trade-off.
And the placenta is also an endocrine organ?
Oh yeah, a major one. It takes over hormone production to maintain the pregnancy. It makes chorionic gonadotropin, CGHEG, in humans that keeps the corpus luteum alive early on.
Oh.
That's what pregnancy tests detect. Then it produces massive amounts of estrogen and progesterone for uterine growth, preventing contractions, preparing mammary glands. It makes chorionic somatomammatropin, influencing maternal metabolism to free up glucose for the fetus, relaxin to soften ligaments for birth, even a hormone to ensure the fetus gets enough calcium, potentially leaching it from the mother's bones if her diet is deficient.
The fetus really calls the shots hormonally via the placenta.
To a large extent, yes. And all this puts huge demands on the mother. Her blood volume increases, her heart works harder, she needs more nutrients. The fetus is metabolically very demanding.
Which leads us finally to the end of gestation. Parturition, birth.
The grand finale, labor, delivery, birth, typically broken into 3 stages.
What happens just before it starts?
There's preparation. The cervix has to soften and thin out ripen, mainly due to relaxin and prostaglandins. The uterus might have mild, irregular contractions, or Braxton Hicks, that help position the fetus head down.
And what actually kicks off true labor? That seems like a million-dollar question.
It's complex, but we have a much better picture now. Estrogen levels soar near term. This does several key things. Promotes connexons, protein channels that link uterine muscle cells electrically so they contract together powerfully.
Like wiring them up?
Exactly. Estrogen also massively increases the number of oxytocin receptors on those muscle cells, making the uterus super sensitive to oxytocin. And it stimulates prostaglandin production, which also promotes contractions.
Okay, so the uterus is primed. What's the trigger?
A key player seems to be corticotropin-releasing hormone, CRH, but interestingly, it's secreted by the fetal part of the placenta.
The fetus signals it's ready.
In a way, yeah. This placental CRH acts like a clock. Its levels rise throughout pregnancy and seem to dictate the timing. It boosts placental estrogen production, reinforcing those priming effects. And crucially, it also drives fetal cortisol production, which is needed to mature the fetal lung specifically to produce surfactant so the air sacs don't collapse after birth.
So fetal lung readiness is directly linked to the signal initiating labor. That's elegant.
It really is. And there's another surprising factor. Inflammation. It seems a controlled inflammatory response in the uterus is necessary for labor. Activation of a pathway called NF-κ ramps up inflammatory signals that help ripen the cervix and boost contractions. Things like uterine stretching, and even that fetal lung surfactant protein reaching the amniotic fluid can activate NF-κ.
Inflammation as a driver.
Wow.
Okay, so the uterus is primed, the signal is sent. How does labor progress?
It becomes a powerful positive feedback loop. The baby's head pushes down, stretching the cervix. That stretch sends nerve signals to the mother's brain, telling the pituitary to release oxytocin.
The love hormone, also the contraction hormone.
Right. Oxytocin travels to the highly sensitive uterus, causes stronger contractions. Stronger contractions push the baby down more, stretching the cervix more. More stretch, more oxytocin.
And it just keeps amplifying.
Exactly. Prostaglandins, produced locally in the uterus, reinforce this cycle too. It builds and builds until the baby is born.
Let's walk through the stages quickly.
Sure. Stage 1 is dilation. The cervix opens up, usually to about 10 centimeters. The amniotic sac often ruptures, water breaks. This is typically the longest stage. Stage 2 is expulsion, full dilation to the actual birth of the baby. Powerful uterine contractions plus voluntary pushing by the mother. Stage 3 is placental. After the baby is out, the uterus contracts again to detach and expel the placenta, the afterbirth, usually pretty quick.
And in many mammals, the mother eats the placenta.
Yeah, placentophagy. Thought to maybe provide nutrients, hormones that help the uterus shrink back down, maybe even reduce pain.
Incredible process. And the final step for mammals? Lactation.
feeding the newborn. Mammary glands, which are actually modified sweat glands, develop during pregnancy under hormonal influence. But milk secretion is held back by the high levels of estrogen and progesterone,
Until birth.
right? When those hormones plummet after the placenta is delivered, it allows prolactin, another pituitary hormone, to kick in and stimulate milk production in the alveoli, the little sacs in the gland.
So prolactin makes the milk. How does the baby get it?
That requires oxytocin again. Suckling by the infant triggers nerve signals, causing oxytocin release. Oxytocin makes tiny muscle cells around the alveoli contract, squeezing the milk out into the ducts. That's the milk ejection or letdown reflex.
Prolactin for production, oxytocin for ejection, another beautifully coordinated system. What an absolutely amazing journey we've covered today, from, the basic drive to continue the species through all the different strategies, the intricate hormonal dances, the cellular mechanics. It's just staggering.
It really is. Looking at it through the lens of physiology, from genes to whole organisms and their ecology, you just see these incredible layers of complexity and adaptation, all focused on this one fundamental goal: making the next generation.
It leaves you appreciating the elegance of it all.
Absolutely. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other biological processes that seem simple on the surface have these incredibly deep, interconnected stories waiting to be fully understood?
A fantastic thought to end on. Thank you, as always, for guiding us through that. And thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.